Hello, Internet! Today is all about Lord of the Rings, and from its novels to its movies and video games over the years, we take a look back at one of the greatest trilogies of all time and give you our thoughts about it. I'm Gabe, this is my co host Adam, where we have different point of views and topics where we come to understanding on this episode of Somewhere in Between. This week's episode is all about Lord of the Rings. From Adam read all the books. I never read a single book, but I did read like the early cartoon versions of them. Obviously, we both watched the movies, and we played all the video. Well, I think majority of the video games. So that's where we're gonna dive in and take a look back at memory lane, because Lord of the Rings is the GOAT, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
So I guess we'll start off as well. You would understand it more, would be the books, because I wouldn't know anything about it. Wasn't a big reader.
So I haven't read the books in a few years, but I've read them probably 2 or 3 times. The at least the regular trilogy. I've only read The Hobbit, I think, only once. But good books. A lot of lore there. This may be an unpopular opinion, but in my opinion, the movies are miles above the books. It's one of those situations where, I don't know, you hear people talk about Harry Potter and some other movies that are books that have been made into movies, and they always say, the book is way better. To me, the books of Lord of the Rings are not superior to the movies. I think the trilogy is great. I think the books are filled with a lot of fat, and the movies cut off the fat and made it epic. It's I don't know, everything that's boring in the books is not in there for the most part, unless you're watching the extended editions.
So they basically take out all the filler and just like, all right, forget the filler.
Yeah,
this book is already long as it is. Just get to the real stuff.
If I remember correctly, they don't even get out of the Shire until like chapter 4, and even when they get out of the Shire, they aren't like, they go through the whole Tom Bombadil thing, which is a totally different character, totally separate character that you don't even hear the name in in the movies. I don't even think they mentioned him in the extended editions, but that's before they even get to Weathertop and before the Nazgul catch up to him. And they basically run into those woods. I think that's when the Nazgul catch up to him right after the Village of Bree. If I'm getting my timelines corrected, they run into the woods and meet Tom. The whole story about Tom Bombadil comes in right after that, and then they get to Weathertop, and then they get to the Elven city of whatever the hell the name is. But anyways, I like the book. I mean, the books are good. I like reading because then it kind of builds. I already like the movies, so expanding on the lore, you catch some stuff in the movies that you don't really realize. There's a lot of stuff that's there are things that are unexplained in the movies, that like the Palantir and the Seeing Stones and all that stuff, that you don't really get a whole picture on it. There'll be like a short story in the book that explains what that stuff is. So it's kind of nice to kind of have a background of what's going on. So in that aspect, it's nice, but I really don't think they're necessary to read. I would definitely recommend it if you want to know more about Lord of the Rings. Currently reading, I haven't started it and put it down because I started reading something else, but I'm reading another one of Tolkien's books. I can't remember the name of it, though. It's going to piss me off if I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically all about the history of the Second Age, I think.
Cool.
And it goes through it's really has, I believe it has a bunch of details about I'm not gonna remember this. There's another like human civilization that was set up is like the Northern Kingdoms. Like there's a whole Northern battle that goes on in Middle Earth that you only see the Southern battle in the movies. There's a whole Northern battle that happens, and it happens before anything happens in the South.
There's like a whole different continent. That's
So, and we'll go into that. Well, I can briefly touch on one of the games is called The War in the North, and it's all about the war in the North that happens prior to like the big battles of the South in Minas Tirith that everybody knows about. And it goes into like some of the details with that. The Dunedain are a huge part of that. It's right next to where this all taking place. I remember my maps right. It's right next to the woods that they go to I can't believe I can't remember the name, but the woods they go to after Gandalf dies and after they go underneath into the mines of Moria. So that woods they go into, it's real close nearby that area. So when they say that the woods is failing and all that stuff, that's around the same time. But yeah, I like the books. They're good books. You almost have to read them if you're like a fan of fantasy and you like reading. I mean, I would highly recommend it. If you can get through Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is way, in my opinion, probably more boring than Lord of the Rings in a book level. So I recommend it, especially if you love the movies. I mean, if you're a diehard fan of the movies, I couldn't recommend reading the books enough.
That's kind of crazy. What you I caught from your what you said, that the movies are better than the books. I was kind of like, wow, that's a first, because I read all the Harry Potter books and everything, and you know, me saying like, oh man, if you read the book, you'll have more, you like it, and then when you said that, I was like, wow, that's a first. Never hear that
been a couple
often.
Movies like that I've read the books after I watched the movies. Two that come to mind right now are The Wolf of Wall Street. Freaking, I love that movie. The book is better. His book is better than the movie. Somehow. I'm telling you right now, there are parts in that book that go into greater detail after he gets caught and put in prison. Stuff that happens after that you.
Oh, so he actually writes
on.
about that, like after he
and
gets
there's a
busted.
whole like couple chapters that go on about that, and it's good. And so is Gone Girl. Gone Girl is another one where the book's probably better than the movie. Both are really good though. So, but those are the two that come to mind. But most of the time, I would say like I said, like those are two good examples. I would say 9 times out of 10, the book is usually better than the movie. But in my experience, I think Lord of the Rings is great. It's timeless. It's great. I mean, going into the reviews of the films themselves, it's hard to rate them between what do you think is the best one and what do you think is the worst one. I mean, they're all great. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Is there a one that you like better to watch? Like, if you're thinking, I want to watch Lord of the Rings, which one are you watching?
2. 2.
Yep. Yeah.
2 would
I'm
be
right
my
there with
favorite.
you. I think 3 is the best film, but 2 is because 3 just brings everything together. It's like watching Endgame versus Infinity War. Like, I would rather probably pop in Infinity War than Endgame.
Yeah.
For a wide variety of reasons. Darker ending. It's a little bit more grounded. The story seems a little bit more. It's like smaller in a way.
But it's more focused on the villain, which I think is way better.
It's I like the second one a lot better than any of them. I mean, I think, like I said, I think the third one's the best one, but I think if I'm sitting down to decide which one to watch, I love the second one. I love the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's so, it reminds me of the Alamo, like the Battle of the Alamo, like the Mexican-American War. Just it's real dirty and grimy, and you can feel the dirt underneath your fingertips. Minas Tirith is great and all, but you don't really get. I mean, I guess you don't feel like the down and dirty of a battle. It feels like a skirmish.
There's no more like there's no weight to it, because if Helm's Deep falls, then they're screwed. Then if Minas Tirith, it's like, oh, we can.
You don't really care about anybody that's in Minas Tirith other than Gandalf
and the other hobbit,
whatever hobbits that's Pippin's right there.
Yeah,
right?
Pippin.
So you don't, and at that point, Faramir is dying and stuff. You really don't care about Faramir. I mean, he's. Now, if you watch the extended editions, and so I've never seen the extended editions. I've always just watched the deleted scenes on YouTube. Like, that's how I know what happened. And Faramir is much more important in the extended editions. Like, there's a whole scene with him and Boromir before Boromir goes to the Elven city of wherever, Rivendell, and like that scene is all in there, or it's at least a flashback in maybe the third or second film. It's all good stuff.
Yeah. I think there's other reasons too. Like, I think Lord of the Rings has it's like a very high like trilogy level, because it's like there's so much like quotes, like you can just quote from like a scene in that movie. Like that's one of my favorite things. Like even like in other movies, they even reference like a dialogue or a scene from Lord of the Rings, which that carries, because that's how big of an impact that Lord of the Rings did throughout the whole movie industry. And like I think the other thing is too is that I think the theme, like music themes and everything, even like when they were battling, you could just hear like the the drums and the trumpets just like escalating the battles even more. Like when shit got down, like it went down. Like I think that's one of the reasons. Like there's a moments where there's like downtime to like, all right, we need to like cool off and gotta get to know like what happened. To we did a battle where we were chasing something, and then once they come to the conclusion like, oh, we need to battle here or go here, and I think it had a good pacing for like a 3 hour movie. Like for each like movie, like that's good pacing
Yeah,
like, that's very good pacing.
I don't get bored in those movies. There's only two spots in the second and third film that I get. Well, there's a spot in every single movie where I get a slightly bored. First one's probably when they go to the forest and talk to the one elf lady after Gandalf dies. That part is boring to me. There's every single one of these films has a small part in the middle, that middle to end, where you get kind of bored. That's one when Sam and Frodo first get caught by Faramir after they see the Oliphants.
Oh yeah.
That part's boring. And then in the third movie, the boring part is when they're in the swamp area. To me, that's all the boring spots. But almost
It's
everything.
mostly all the Hobbit scenes.
Yeah, I mean it is. And I think it's intentional. Like it's supposed to be that way, but for the most part, I don't get bored. I could quote those movies. If you popped in right now, I could quote every single line of that movie. Every single line. I love these movies. In my opinion, there's not a better movie trilogy in existence. And that's someone coming from somebody who named his kid Leia and loves Star Wars. I think these movies are better than the original Star Wars trilogy, hands down. Now, I don't think these movies would happen if you don't have the original Star Wars trilogy, so I accept that part of the past. But this is a superior trilogy, and to quote Clerks, to unquote quote Clerks, I think it's Clerks 2. There's only one return, and that's not of the Jedi; it's of the King. I know it's the other way around. But, I love these movies. They're great, and I love Star Wars too, obviously. But these are great. There's nothing to be said about them. It's great.
A spoiler, maybe a future podcast for in the future. Another thing is too is that like, okay, so when we all wrapped up, okay. Another thing is too about Two Towers before I move on is that Gimli and Legolas like had a lot of banter in between them. Like that was like one of my favorite things in that whole movie. Was that like in the first one they hated each other, had their differences, and their second one, and then they're just bantering to one another to where like especially when they were fighting. Especially at Helm's Deep, where they were like, it was a competition to see how many orcs they kill. So I thought that was like even better. And then like in the Return of the King, where their final battle, where Gimli's all like, "Ugh, I want to have died died next to an elf," and then Legolas goes in there like, "What about side by side with a friend?" And I was like, They came together like bros. Like that was cool. So
People talk about watching Remember the Titans and saying, this could bring our divided country together. I think you guys need to watch Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, man.
Gimli and Legolas's relationship grow, and that's one of the good. That's why I said Return of the Kings is I think it's a superior film, but it's because everything matters. There's not somehow they make it so we care about a dwarf and an elf, and like. These guys are they're bros,
total
man.
Like it's cool because they're total opposites, and then throughout the whole adventure they're becoming like friends. Like they're setting aside their differences. Like, oh, we do have a few things in common, like that's like one of the good things. That was like another scene in pretty sure it was maybe Return of the King. Pretty think it was when they were having like a beer competition and
in Rohan and at Edoras.
Yeah, and so like Legolas so like, all right, I'll play. He's like casually drinking, and then has more and more. That was such a great like thing. Like that was like one thing too, and then like even like other like not important characters, they still get like their time to shine too. So like everyone you meet,
like Pippin and Merry, they all have a purpose.
Yeah,
Arwen and Éomer. And nobody ever talks about how badass Éomer, Carl Urban, of Lord of the Rings fan now of The Boys, and I know you're not watching that, but
Yeah, I'm waiting for the
he's
seasons
amazing
to
in this
drop.
movie. He is so underrated. It's nobody ever really talks about how awesome his performance is. And the same thing with, I don't know who the actor's name is, King Theoden. He's great in this movie.
Theoden.
Is
I
there
know
a
your
bad
face.
performance in this movie? I mean, I really don't know. It's so good across the board. Everything about it is timeless, and you can still watch it today. I mean, Return of the King came out in 2006.
Even the
So it's
visuals
almost,
still hold up, dude. Like that's crazy. The visuals and everything. Like
I mean,
they
the
still
visuals,
hold
and the
up.
reason why the visuals are going to hold up is because they used, and if you watched all the
Like
behind the
behind the
scenes
scenes
footage that
stuff.
I watched, it's all because they use practical effects. A
Yep.
lot of this stuff is not CGI. Like and that's why I think the Battle of Helm's Deep has a little bit more, um, it has a little bit more gravity to it than the Battle of Minas Tirith, is because a lot of that stuff, when like they stormed the Hornburg and all that, that's all actual people dressed as orcs running in through the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes everything more grounded, and that's why Star Wars is so great, the original trilogy compared to these prequels, because it's it's actually happening, whether or not it's a fake thing that's happening, and it doesn't look like Aladdin where it's plastic, but it's also real.
Yeah, and then another scene too. Like I remember, like the hobbits. Like when you meet them, they were like they didn't know how to fight and everything. Especially like Pippin and I forgot the other hobbit, Merry or Merry. Then then like near like the end of like the movie, like they turn like they were like cowards, now they're brave, because like when Aragorn like gives him that final speech and he said for Frodo, those two little hobbits were the first ones to fucking charge. I thought that was like amazing. Yeah. And then everyone charged after it.
Yeah, for Frodo. I mean, that scene alone,
that was fucking awesome.
Dude, if that doesn't bring tears to your eyes when you see Aragorn like
just turn around.
The whole reason why he looks like that, he looks it's explained more in the book, is Sauron is tempting him to turn there, and Aragorn, because at this point, this is, and if you watch the extended edition, that's when the Mouth of Sauron comes out with the chainmail. What is it called? The chainmail that Frodo has, that they stole from him when they caught him after.
After the chainmail, the mithril vest.
Yeah, mithril. He brings that out and throws it in his face and like, yeah, he's already dead. We already caught him. So in Aragorn's mind, they've already caught Frodo. They already have the ring, and Sauron is actually tempting him to turn sides and like turn with him to take over the rest of the world. And that's what makes that whole scene so much better, is because he turns around and looks at everybody and is like, yeah, they got the ring. They're going to kill us all. We're taking as many of these fuckers as we can for Frodo. And like, that's what you got to look at when you're watching this. And it's like, yes, Sam and Merry and Pippin run through because they're like, that's our buddy,
that's our bro.
We're gonna kill as many of these guys as we can. If we're gonna go down swinging. And it's so great. And then, man, it's one of the greatest of all time. That's why, I mean, kind of going into Avengers, it's shifting total gears here. That's why Avengers, the final scene in Endgame, is so good. It's the same exact feeling.
The portals.
Because you have all this time, and they've built all these characters up so well. And when they finally come to that last battle or that last confrontation, it actually means something. Every single interaction means something.
Yeah. Oh, then like when you mentioned that mithril thing, I thought that was I didn't watch that part, but in the Return of the King video game, which we'll get to in a second.
Yep.
That they showed that scene, like, I have a message for your master.
Because you fight the Mouth of Sauron in the video game.
Yeah.
In the PS2 version. I don't think you do in the GameCube version. Only the PS2 version you have.
Oh, really? I thought it was the PS. I thought everyone had it.
I played both of them, and I'm almost positive the GameCube version was a little bit more cut down. I know it was cut down on the Two Towers version, so because the GameCube had a little bit more limitations on it, so they cut some parts out.
Oh, I did not know that.
Well, we can shift gears right into video games right now too.
Oh, I mean, one more, because I don't know. We can get this out the way. The Hobbit, because okay, I mean, Hobbit was like the cast, like the guy who played what's his name, who played
Luke Evans.
What?
The guy who played not Luke Evans. The guy who played
Bilbo.
Oh yeah. Morgan.
Yeah. That guy, I don't know his name, but he was like the perfect Bilbo to play that. and then having Sherlock, the guy, uh,
Martin Freeman.
yeah, Martin Freeman. Yeah, he was the best Bilbo. I think that's why I kind of like. I guess like if I want to go see it, like okay, I'll go see it because he was great in Sherlock. Because that's how like I I got to watch him first, and then I heard he was gonna be the Hobbit. He was gonna be uh
Bilbo.
Bilbo. So I was like, okay, I'll watch it because that was a good role for him. I liked it. I liked how it was. And then
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't care much for the other cast like the Hobbits, and then when you said like Legolas was like you said Legolas was never in any of these like things that
Yeah,
happened.
he's not even. I don't believe he's even mentioned in The Hobbit.
Not at
It's
all.
about like the only ones that are in there are, and this is the book I haven't read as much as the original, but like the main trilogy. Um, I believe it's his two brothers that are mentioned in it. Here's the problem with The Hobbit. Yeah, I'm going to go into it here. There's two problems. Number one, it suffers from the same thing that the prequel trilogy in Star Wars does is where they basically make everything CGI and there's way less practical effects. It's not as good. It's not as good as a film. Also, the other, and this is probably the bigger problem with this movie, and it would have been better if it would have been one or two movies, because
Yeah, because it's a short. It was a short book, and
yeah.
then
So
he stretched it to three.
if you look at The Hobbit, Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return of the King, those are four books, right? All the original books all the books from the original trilogy, like the main trilogy, are longer than The Hobbit, and each of those are made out of one movie.
Yeah,
And then the the prequel, which is the Hobbit book, is made into three movies. So
which
everything
is
that I said
crazy.
about taking the books that have a lot of junk in it and they cut the fat off the meat and made it just the best parts of the books, it's exact opposite with the trilogy because
They
they
added more
had
fat.
to make it in they had to add more stuff to it. So the romance with the one elf and what's her face who Evangeline Lilly's character,
Yeah,
that whole romance that doesn't exist at all. Like if they would have just made, they could have made it into two movies still and made it would have been as timeless as the original trilogy, in my opinion. There's a couple things too that are just a little too animated. Like I know in the original, the the main trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, there's some scenes where Legolas is basically skateboarding down some steps or an Oliphant or whatever. But the barrel scene in the second of these movies is terrible.
oh yeah, or even
It's so
or when the
fake.
bridge
You do not think that anyone's going to die, and if you do, you're an idiot
or when the
because
bridge was collapsing, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna go in slow motion and climb up and step up there. I remember that. I was like, oh come on.
yeah, I mean, there were things like that now again, like I said, that was part of the fad of the books that they should have cut off because they can actually do that in the books. They're light-footed. Like they make it a point that elves can do that kind of thing in the books, and that's the kind of thing that we don't care as movie theater. It looks way too fake.
Yeah,
There are the good shining parts about that original the Hobbit trilogy is, I mean, Ian McKellen coming back as Gandalf is fantastic. Martin Freeman, like you mentioned, as Bilbo is great. The actor who plays Thorin Oakenshield is amazing, and as well as Luke Evans, who plays the bow guy who basically becomes king at the end. They're all great. Other than that, I mean, even what's his face coming back to reprise his role, Saruman is great. R.I.P. Rest in heaven.
he was still in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he was. He was in
Oh
the second and third ones.
wow.
He might have been in the first one too. Yeah, because they go to
No,
Rivendell in the
yeah,
first
he
one.
was in the first one. I remember that.
Yeah, he's
I
in all
forgot
three.
about this. Wow, I'm surprised. That's crazy. Like all
So,
those guys are still around, when
yep.
they made the prequel. So that's pretty dope.
So yeah, and then like where they got some of the fat to pump out three movies was taking stuff from the Lord of the Rings and putting it into that. Like, because I believe the whole thing about the Necromancer, I don't believe that's in the Hobbit at all. I think, or if it is, it's like a short story that's part of the book. It might be in the Fellowship. The Necromancer, that whole side story where Gandalf, Saruman, and the one elf lady, they all go out and take out the Necromancer. That whole scene is like maybe a chapter or like a short story in either the Hobbit or the Fellowship of the Ring, and that is half the movie. I mean, between the second and third Hobbit movies, it's a good third of those two movies. And that's all fat that they had to add in, and it's the boring parts of it.
Yeah, they
good
lost
part about
they lost the magic when they made those prequels.
Yeah, I think they should have just made it into two movies like they're originally going to do. I wasn't going to go see these in theaters because I was so pissed they're making it into three because I knew what was going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to be as good as the original one.
The executives wanted money, so that's why they turned it into 3. I think even what's his name? Peter Jackson even said 2 was gonna be it, and then like the executives like hell it is. You're gonna make it 3.
I mean, I remember going to see the second one and Bilbo goes and sees the dragon, and then the dragon flies off. That whole scene with like them dousing the dragon in gold. I mean, like that doesn't exist. I don't believe that happened in the book. There's just so many things. It's so bad. It's not bad. It's not so bad. It is not even in the same ballpark as the original trilogy. It's not even close. It's not even playing the same sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's bad compared to it, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
We're talking a 10 out of 10 versus like a 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna give it like a 6.5, but yeah, 6 sounds right. All right, so we got the Hobbit out the way. So now we're gonna go towards the video games where when me and Adam were growing up, we played a lot of it, especially Return of Two Towers and the Return of the King on the PS2 days and GameCubes, and that was like the one thing that blew everyone away. Like graphics back then, we're like, holy crap, that's cool, because you know how they did the scene transitions to where in video game, and then they added the movie like in it. Like that was cool. Like everyone's all like, yo, that's so sick.
Yeah, I mean, these two games had so much going for them. Before I get into too much, but you remember when the first time you played the Return of the King game, and I love the Two Towers game. The first time you play Return of the King, it puts you back in right at the end of the Two Towers near Gandalf.
Oh yeah,
and you basically defeat Helm's Deep. You basically go in at sunset and win, and then that's when it converts over to the orcs running out and going into the extended scene from the extended edition, them running out into Fangorn Forest. Yeah, those games they're so good, and you don't get good movie video games anymore. You just don't. And these are this is one of the high points.
Those are right up there.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, this is part of what made this game in particular made the movies so special to me, because I was already invested in all these special editions. These movies pumped out, and especially the third, the Return of the King, they added all this extra footage, these interviews between all the hobbits, Gandalf. Everybody is in it. There's not a single. I think they're all voicing their own.
Yeah,
original lines
made their lines too.
Everything is great. I mean, there are just so many things going for it. For its time, graphically, it was very good. For its time, the mission setups were not bad. I mean, there were some problems with the third one where the camera was kind of locked in place.
You only had like a third person, and so you only could move from a distance.
If you were playing co-op, which co-op is the only way to play this game. If you remember if you remember playing this, that was the only way to play it. It's fantastic. Those games are great. Going back, I don't think I'd like them as much, but they were so integral, and especially the second one, I don't think is as good as the third one. Somehow it got better. Electronic Arts. That was back when Electronic Arts actually
gave a shit about their games and their titles.
Did a good job with some of these titles. So
yeah,
I got to give them props. And keep in mind, most of these, because EA owned all the licensing rights to all the Lord of the Rings games for a long time, and that's kind of goes into the next game, which is the next set of games is. Probably in my mind, I'm looking at this list that we put down. These are the best Lord of the Rings games that exist, especially being an RTS fanboy.
In his opinion,
and those are the Battle for Middle Earth games. They are by far, they're awesome. Again, everybody comes back, and it's very similar. And I played these years after the movies came out. I bought these. You can't buy the second one. Like there is nobody it's in licensing hell right now, so you can't buy the second one for anything. I don't think you can buy the first one or the second one anymore. Brand new. You have to
Oh,
buy it used.
gotta
It's
buy
like
it from
brand
the
new
internet.
200. It's like $200. If you go on Amazon right now and try to buy Battle for Middle Earth 2 with a Wrath of the Lich King expansion, it's probably $200
Wow.
because it's in licensing hell and they can't decide who can own it. But if they could just get their heads out of their asses and come up with a remaster for this game or a third game, it would sell like hotcakes. I mean, it is a great game, and it's all built off, kind of going off of last week's stuff. It's all built off the same engine Command and Conquer 2 Tiberian Sun is built off of, and it's great. It's so good. There's so much detail. Like I said, all the actors come back, reprise their roles, their original lines. You have every single main character as a playable character, like every single one of them. Aomir, everybody. I think you can even play as Denethor on the second game. Like that's the steward of Gundor. I'm pretty sure everybody's back. This game is so popular. There's still a modding community behind this game. I think they're remastering it right now.
Really?
And yeah, there's huge remasters for this game. That's fantastic. The second one in particular. They're great games. So yeah, pirate a copy if you can get a copy online. That's what I did.
And then moving on towards that, the Third Age, which it was a different from any other Lord of the Rings, but me and Adam played a shit ton, so much hours into this game, and I could back it up because he maxed out every fucking character in that game.
Oh yeah, I mean this game, and I think the reason, correct me if I'm wrong here, Gabe, but the reason why you like this game is because this is around the same time. I believe this game was released probably around the same time 10 or 10-2 Final
Yeah, it was
Fantasy was
like that was
released.
when I was starting to get into those RPG element
Yeah, it's
games,
like
those turn based.
yeah, like the turn-based RPG type games. This
Yeah,
is exactly like that, and it is
I think that's what I liked it more
set in
about
the
it.
world. And again, I believe you have original characters coming back, the whole cast coming back. Not the whole cast, a lot of the same cast coming back and reprising roles. There's just so much depth there, and then it expands on it. Basically, the whole premise of the game is a second fellowship that follows behind the original fellowship, and the main guy gets stabbed by a Morgul blade, and throughout it is becoming cursed and is basically turning on it because of the power of the ring or power of the Morgul blade, which we'll go into in the next video game. Similar situation, and that whole element was kind of stolen from the original thing and this game, I would say. This game's great. I mean, there's so much in the time. They just don't make games like this anymore, where you
Not
can spend
anymore.
so much time. I mean, you could spend on a single player game. You can spend hours and hours doing it, and it all feels meaningful. It all feels like you want to collect every single little thing. Now, I play an Assassin's Creed now. I don't care. I just want to get through it. Hopefully, there's some cool cinematics. And the time to play it is way less than the time to play this game, and it's just great. I can't speak highly enough. I think this is one of those games that they should remaster as well.
I would love, yeah,
Um,
that's like one of those, like, especially if
yeah,
they put on EA Play for the Xbox, like, if they
yeah,
put, like, that game, I would love to go back and play that game again.
uh, yeah. I'd love to play it. I mean, I was actually looking probably a month or two ago to get it on Xbox 360 so that I could play it on Xbox One, and it's not compatible, so
Aw.
you can't play it. Um, yeah, it just sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. And then going from the Third Age, and then they had like a little downtime for Lord of the Rings. I mean, they came out with like Lord of the Rings games, but nothing like high
Yeah, they,
budget.
they came out with the Hobbit game. I never played that one. The Lord of the Rings ones, which the Lord of the Rings ones are usually they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty decent. They're not really, they're not really in-depth games though.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're kid games.
And then a little game called Shadow of, Shadow of Mordor. Am I getting that right?
Yep, yep.
That's the first one, right? The Shadow of
First one's
Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor, and
Yeah.
then the sequel is
So
Shadow of War.
when I saw that on E3, like the first thing that came to my head was Assassin's Creed because they showed off the movement and everything. Oh, you can climb up walls, you can do this, and everyone was. I remember a lot of people that actually watched the trailer and saw like their opinions on it. Everyone's saying, "Oh, it's just a not another just it's Lord of the Rings but with Assassin's Creed." And so no one cared about this game's going to be, this one's going to be ignore and all that. But they didn't tell us about the Nemesis system. That's what
Mhm.
fucking sold me on this game was that. Oh, and the other thing was too was like it was so brutal, like killing orcs, like chopping off their heads and just stabbing them like 50 times in the chest. Never got old with me.
No.
especially too if if an orc killed you, and then that's the other cool thing. I mean, you technically die, but you come back to life. But there is a catch though. So if like an orc like killed you, they get promoted to like officer, and then they get stronger, and they get buffed and everything. And that just makes you want to just be like, all right, motherfucker, like I'm cutting your head off, or I'm just gonna execute you with like my ability button. Like that was cool. Like that never got old. Like doing that, and the story too. It's like with Talion, like he gets just a ranger, loving husband and father, then gets murdered by the bad guys. I don't know what
Witch
they're
King.
the Witch King. Yeah, the Witch King. And then then he's caught in between the world of death and the living, and that's when he meets Celebringbar. I'm gonna butcher this name. Shut up.
Okay.
He meets him, and that's another thing is that I didn't care much for Talion. I cared more about the ghost guy because he was more
Mhm.
interesting, and because I liked him because like he was the guy who's like I made the ring, I made like the old before the OG ring. I made this
Mhm.
ring that was more powerful than the other ring. So that was pretty cool. Like I especially like I love Lord of the Rings, so like I got more out of it because I watched all the movies and stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then just about it, like that was a sleeper game. Then all of a sudden everyone's all like, oh my god, like this game's amazing because people. That's why I like reviews on other games, like especially like GameSpot, IGN. I don't listen to them. I like listening to like people that's outside of those like media outlets.
Yeah. Those are the
So
same people pushing Raid Shadow Legends before they start their review.
yeah, yeah, those are the
Yeah.
same people that put Raid Shadow Legends. If you're not playing Raid Shadow Legends, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what you said, these games are fantastic for a wide variety of reasons. Yes, it has a lot of the same elements as Assassin's Creed, but unlike Assassin's Creed, at least unlike the first couple Assassin's Creeds, it actually has a good story. You
Hmm.
actually care about the character. You care. And to me, I cared about Talion. I cared about Celebrimbor. And then it also expanded on lore that we already love and didn't screw it over. It didn't take the lore, shit on it, and then try to make something new. It took the lore and expanded upon it. And I know it's not canon. It's not a book. This is just something they came up with. It's still great. I mean, it's great. To me, it's canon. I think that Gollum was doing this stuff while, everything, while Bilbo had the ring in the Shire, before Frodo even knew that the ring, or Gandalf even knew the ring existed over in the Shire. This is what was going down when the war was starting to brew over in Mordor, when Sauron started to come back.
Yeah, wasn't this all like
Kind of,
near Mordor, right? Like all this
yeah.
and
So
stuff.
this is all near, yeah. It's all in Mordor. Like
Yeah.
it's called Shadow Mordor. So everything is in Mordor. Uh, and on top of the base game, that's great, and which is surprising. I'm even going to say this: the expansions to the base game for Shadow of Mordor in particular are phenomenal. And if you haven't played them, I would highly recommend them. Uh,
They're free on Game Pass,
Yeah,
on
they're
Xbox
they
Game
are
Pass.
absolutely great. I can't recommend it enough because it takes, especially I think the one's called like the Shining Lord. It kind of goes into what the second game will
Oh,
be.
the
You
Bright
know how where
Lord.
you're building your own army and stuff. That's kind of what the second expansion is. The first expansion, I believe you are that hunter, that dwarf hunter.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. That one's good. That one's good as well. There's a bunch of good. I mean, there's so many good parts about this game. And this is one of the things I did like about it as well is it wasn't too easy like Assassin's Creed is.
Oh no, it,
This
it,
was
it
actually
got
difficult.
challenging.
Like I got killed when you have to fight at the end. Spoiler warning here. I mean, you fight Sauron at one point.
The young
I
one.
died so many times. It pissed me off so many times. It's still a great game though. I still beat these games. Uh, it's just crazy. It's like a renaissance of what Lord of the Rings is, and it used to be. And it's like taking something that we love, like looking at comic books and making it into the MCU. That's what this game is doing. And if they make a third one, I'm all in. I mean, there's just no way I'm not going to be in on that. I love the story and anything that expands upon it. I love it.
I wonder how, if they do, I wonder how they're gonna move forward with the third one, because I'm like, where can they go from there?
Yeah, I don't think they will. I mean, they hinted at what was going to come after the end of the first one, so we knew there was going to be a sequel, but I don't know how they do it. I mean, you'd almost have to bring in a new character.
Yeah, because they kind of, spoiler, kind of wrapped up on the in the second game, and it kind of, and like, and the even like in the switching gears, what was the second game? Was it Battle of Mordor or War? Shadow of
Shadow
War.
of War.
Yeah, Shadow of War, and they kind of like it was, well, they did their own version of trying to intertwine with like in the original trilogy, which I kind of appreciated. So like what he was like Talion when he gets betrayed by Celebringbar, and then he uses like the evil ring to be like, okay, I'm gonna, I have to use the ring, but if I use the ring, I'm gonna lose like my humanity if I use this. So he tries to like fight the evil, or before he gets turned, and he's the guy who hold off try to hold off the Witch Kings as much as he could. And that's when that go towards the beginning of the Fellowship or something like that. So like I like how they you can either agree with it or not, but I like the idea of like, oh yeah, this could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
So
the same like going back to the Third Age. That's why the Third Age is good, is because they are everything that happens in the Third Age. They are like they're in the Mines of Moria when the Fellowship is in the Mines of Moria. They don't run into them, but like the scene where the skeleton falls down the well in the movie,
mhm.
they are like a level below them when that happens.
Oh cool.
So they hear Gandalf, you know, basically Gandalf yells at Mary, or not Mary, Pippin. They hear that, and that's what I said. Like it builds on top of the lore. Third Age builds on top of the lore. The Shadow of Mordor and War, they both build on top of the lore and don't shit on it.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other things.
Yeah. No, that is one good thing about, like, I think that's a good thing is that EA, like, they actually took, I'm pretty sure like a lot of publishers and developers are like Lord of the Rings fans, so they're kind of like, all right, like, we love these IPs, so we're not gonna ruin them, because if we do, the internet is gonna hang us. So we do not want to do that.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
That kind of shifts gears to the only really upcoming news is, and I don't know if you've seen the trailer or not. I watched it again today just to kind of prep for today's thing, but there is going to be a new Lord of the Rings game coming out, I think next fall, or it might be next summer, in 2021 anyways. That is Gollum. And you are going to play as Gollum, and you are going to be in Mordor, sneaking around. We haven't seen any gameplay. We've seen screenshots. We've seen the teaser trailer. It's like about a minute long. I'm excited for this. I don't know what to expect though. I don't know if this is going to be another Assassin's Creed like game. But I problem I have with it is I can't see Gollum being like Talion, where he's running up
being a
walls and
main
stuff. So I don't know how you can make it.
or how is he gonna work? I'm watching it right
Yeah, like,
now,
what is-
just skimming through it.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work. I'm excited for it. I mean, I'll watch the trailers and stuff and watch a gameplay or watch a couple, maybe the first hour or so to kind of come up with a decision of whether or not to buy it. But anything Lord of the Rings that's coming out is good news as far as I'm concerned.
I liked reading the comments on here saying like, yes, I totally didn't want to play as soldiers of Minas Tirith before the siege of Gondor, or play as Lord Elrond in his prime. I wanted to play as a anorexic hobbit. And then another comment said, next Lord of the Ring game, play as the Ring.
No, I mean, I think the next Lord of the Rings game should be like a alternate universe where you play as Saruman or Sauron,
That'd be pretty dope.
and you're gonna take over Middle Earth. I think that would be the coolest thing. I could see them doing
Like those what ifs,
Yeah,
what
like a
ifs
what
things.
if.
No,
I could
that'd
see
be
them
pretty
doing
cool.
a battle from Middle Earth, which they already. I mean, Battle for Middle Earth kind of goes into this, but I'd love to see it as a single player game, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Battle for Middle Earth. One of the things you do in the second game you do this in the first game too. There's a good campaign and an evil campaign. So you actually play as Saruman and Sauron, and you have two different armies, and you can fight the good side. Like you do, um, unlike the good campaign follows all the stuff that happens in the Fellowship of the Ring in the original trilogy, where you have the Battle of Helm's Deep, you have the Battle of Minas Tirith, you have all these battles. The good campaign, or the evil campaign rather, that goes through some of the stuff you hear about, but you don't actually see. Like the Battle of Osgiliath, you go through that battle and you win that battle. That's the one where I don't know if you remember that one. That's where they're at the river and they try to surprise them. Faramir's there. That battle, you have that battle, and then there's the battle at Edoras, which is the capital of Rohan, where they all evacuate to go to Helm's Deep too.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
actually have a battle there. So it's really cool. There's a bunch of stuff that happens there that's cool. You actually have a battle at the Shire where you kill all the hobbits.
Oh wow.
There's a battle at in Rivendell where you kill all the elves. I think there might be a battle where you kill all the dwarves as well.
So basically, they're just wiping out everyone as they go.
Yeah, and the final battle's at the Grey Havens. So like at the end of Lord of the Rings, where they're going to heaven, off the boat.
Yeah, the boat.
I believe the last battle is either there or at Rivendell. So you have a battle at the Grey Havens or the port at to go to the Grey Havens and at Rivendell. So it's cool. It's like an alternate universe. It's awesome. Can't say much more.
I mean, I only saw a trailer, so I'm kind of like, well, they didn't show really. I mean, it's just a teaser and all, so we'll see how they're gonna roll it out. I mean, that's what we all were like when people saw like the Assassin's Creed for Shadow of War. Everyone's all like, "Oh, it's just Assassin's Creed," and then when they actually played it, yeah, we just gotta see more.
I'm excited about it though. Like I said, anything Lord of the Rings, I eat it up. I mean, my wedding ring is almost the exact same ring, so I mean that's kind of why. That's kind of why I got it. So.
All right. Well, I think that's about wraps it up right here for us for today's episode of Lord of the Rings. So that was actually a pretty fun episode. So thank you all for watching. This is where we're gonna go to our after hours after this. So thank you all. I know we did a little bit early, but it is what it is. So look out for this video sometime next week, and we will catch y'all next Saturday. Bye.
Later.